Hello and welcome to another episode of a Brothers Creed podcast, where we inspire fathers to build the blueprint for future generations. We are the Thomas Brothers. I am Ethan.
And I'm Jared, and today we talk with Travis Neville, who is he's an author, he's the writer. He's actually sent us a book that's called Ideal Man, Reviving Masculinity. And we talk about the book, we talk about fatherhood, we talk about what it is to be a man and some of those attributes and virtues. It's a great conversation. He's got some great insights. Ethan and I talk about ourselves a little bit. He's also going to post this episode on his podcast, so we actually give a little bit more background on us, and also at the end of the episode, we share a part of our personal creeds, which is the question we ask everybody at the end of our episodes. So it's a great podcast. Let's go ahead and dive in.
All right, let's do it.
Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day.
You should be a monster, an absolute monster, and then you should learn how to control it.
No retreat, no surrender.
You can't conceive of what I'm capable of.
There is no tomorrow. There is no tomorrow.
What we do in life, that goes in eternity.
All right, Travis, it's so great to talk to you. Thanks for taking the time to meet with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Super excited to chat.
So, Travis, I think that our listeners don't know you and your listeners don't know us. So I think it might be great to just give a little bit of an intro. Maybe you could introduce yourself, and then Ethan and I could both introduce ourselves and what a Brothers Creed podcast is all about. And then we can dive into some other topics about manliness and fatherhood here.
Yeah, you got it. My name is Travis Neville. I work to help men be better at being men, specifically. We live in a world that is, for better or for worse, attempting to sort of feminize men in a lot of ways. And I'm trying to help men understand that even though you have these pressures come from the outside, who you are at your core is a good thing. Who you are at your core is going to be helpful to a family. Who you are at your core as a man is going to make you a great community leader. All of these things that you can get confused about because of the signals you get off of screens. I'm trying to sort of push back against. But that's what I do. I'm a writer. I've got my third book will come out in June. It's titled Mastering Masculinity. The book that's out now is called Reviving Masculinity. That's one we'll talk about today. Mm-hmm. And I run a podcast to that end, trying to promote that work and help guys feel more comfortable about just being themselves. That's what I do.
Excellent. And how long have you been doing your podcast?
Oh man, I'm at about 4 years right now.
Excellent.
I've been hit and miss. I was great at getting it every week for about 100 episodes, and then I started building my own home.
Oh
and
man,
that took
that's
a lot of time. Yeah, I wasn't in a place to actually have the internet service to be able to do it. So I slowed down a little bit, but I'm back in action now and enjoying it. Yeah, so I think I'm at 112 episodes right now. So she's going all right.
Very good. And you said you were coming out with your third book. Reviving Masculinity is the one we have now, the one that we're going to talk about today. What's the other one?
The first book I wrote is called The Jossman Method. It is specifically a male take on how to, in a very organized fashion, put structure to healing. So essentially, it's how to get yourself out of a bad spot, whether it's a divorce, whether it's going to jail, whether it's the death of a family, or whatever those low points you might have in your life. It's a 12 habit system for scoring yourself daily, so that you can know on a mathematical equation, hey, I'm doing a good job as a man.
Interesting. Yeah.
I'm running my life well. That was my first book, and yeah, it's very much transitioned into the masculinity stuff very quickly, and that's where we are now.
Very cool. And are you a dad yourself? Do you have?
I'm not. That's an unusual situation for me, man. I had my whole life I thought that's what I would be doing. And sometimes I wake up and it's still disorienting. How am I in my 40s and I'm not raising a family? It's the weirdest thing. So I chose to use the information I'd collected through my years as a high school teacher in my years, again, anticipating being a father, coaching, doing all these things. I developed a basis of knowledge. And because I'm not in the classroom anymore, and I don't have my own children, I need to, give that back, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm doing, right? That's the deal. So no, I don't have children, man. I always wanted to, just never worked out.
No, I love that. Well, you're still, by teaching fathers and inspiring men to be better, in many ways, you are helping those kids as well. And that's what we try to do as well.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear about what you guys do, man. Tell me more about that.
Yeah.
My listeners are going to hear for sure.
You want to go first, Ethan?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Ethan Thomas. Jared and I, we started a Brothers Creed podcast about 3.5 years ago.
October of 2020.
Yeah, so we were
out of the pandemic.
Yeah, Jared
Nice.
Jared and I live about 45 minutes away from each other, and we both have 4 kids that are about the same ages. I have 3 boys and a girl. Jared is 2 years older than me, almost 2 years older than me. And we were sitting around one night, our wives were sitting over on the couch, and they were talking. Our kids were playing games, and Jared and I were in the office, and we were sitting in the chairs and just talking about life, talking about marriage and kids and careers and everything else. And we kind of looked at each other and we were like, we should record this conversation. Like these are awesome conversations. Not only do we think that other people and other men that are in similar circumstances as us would benefit from just hearing these things, but I think our kids would be interested in this conversation 50 years from now, or 20 years from now, or
it's
even
posterity,
today.
right?
Yeah.
You're leaving
And
that
so,
information for them. I'm conscious of that myself. Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, 100%. And so we were like, well, let's start a podcast, and we're like, really? Should we do that? And we're like, well, okay, well, what would we call it? And we went through all these different types of things and made a bunch of suggestions, and then we were like, what we came up with a Brothers Creed. And a creed is a set of principles or guidelines or aims that help guide one's actions in your life. And so us being brothers and the brotherhood that exists out there of fathers and men that are trying to be better, we were like, man, let's put together what we feel that creed or that set of principles should be, so that us personally can become better men, better fathers, better husbands, and that we can help inspire others to do the same. And that we can help inspire the next generation to be better than us. And that's really where it started. And the podcast has evolved over time. Really, it started out with anything that was motivation, experiences, and exploration were our 3 tenets. And anything that we felt that motivated us, we'd talk about it. Anything that we wanted to explore, we would explore it. Hey, I want to learn more about masculinity, or I want to learn more about grit, or I want to learn more about whatever it might be. Aliens, I don't know, whatever it was that interested us, we were all over it. And then experiences was really diving into maybe a little bit more of history, talking about our own personal experiences in life, and sharing those and being open and vulnerable, but at the same point, talking and sharing the experiences that other people had in history, whether it is, war stories or people that had amazing inventions or struggles that people overcame and extreme situations of overcoming obstacles or whatever it might be. And so, Jared and I have grown, I'd say, stronger in our relationship because of this, but others that have listened as well have told us that it's refreshing, and I'm sure you've gotten feedback too, just to kind of talk about things that it seems in today's society are kind of being swept under the rug.
Oh man, yeah, I love that feedback. You don't get it as much, of course, as you'd like to get it, but when you do, I figure it's a 1 to 10 rule, right? So when you got a little positive feedback, there are 10 people that you helped that just didn't say anything to you, and that's okay. So remember that you're impacting way more people than you think you are.
Yeah.
No, I love that. Yeah, I mean, Ethan did a great job of explaining a lot of the things that our podcast is about. I think that in some ways, I'll talk about some of the things that he didn't mention. I think it's been for, we talk about building a personal creed, a set of beliefs or virtues that you live by, and etching that creed on your heart, and then growing that over time and strengthening that. So many times, I think that it's important to remember things. We forget things so easily that if you look at, you read the Bible, or a lot of times it's talking about remember this, or remember that, or remember your ancestors, or remember the promises that were made. And so being able to remember and keep those, your creed and the virtues and what you want to achieve, like on the forefront of your mind, is so important. And the podcast, selfishly, for me, has allowed me to do that, because it's like, hey, Ethan and I will rub shoulders and talk with people who are interesting, like yourself, Travis, or like lots of other people. Like last month we met with this guy from, he runs a social media account called the Fathers Guild. He talked to us about some of the challenges that he's recently accepted around not yelling at his kids. Or we've met with people who are real estate investors. We met with people who are experts at goal setting. We've met with people who treasure hunters. We met with a kid who goes and explores mines in the desert. Just all kinds. Those are more fun episodes. But we talked with lots of different people who are also focused on improving themselves and adhering to a personal code of conduct. And I love that we get to rub shoulders with those folks. But also, it's a great creative outlet as well. I know that you're an author, which is such a great creative outlet. Some of our episodes that we have done they're a little bit more theatrical in a way, especially when we talk about history. We did one on the like famous duos. We actually partner with another podcast friends of ours called Virtuous Men, and we kind of tell these stories of history, and we put music to it and sound effects, and those have been really a fun thing to do, but also to talk about the virtues of these people who have gone before and remember them. I remember Ethan did one on the Wright brothers, and I did Lewis and Clark in that famous duos.
North Carolina, Wright brothers.
Yeah, exactly. Right? And just great episodes. And so we've been doing episodes almost every single week. Up until this year, we've decided to slow down a little bit, do 2 a month, but we're loving it, and we're so thankful for the opportunity we have to meet with folks like yourself, Travis, and read your book. Thank you for sending us your book, by the way. That was a pleasure to read.
You're welcome. Glad you enjoyed it.
So yeah, that's a little bit about us, and we're brothers, and so we tease each other every now and then, and it's fun. We usually we're pretty aligned with our opinions, but sometimes we can diverge.
Wouldn't be fun if you didn't.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, and we had one of our brother-in-laws. In the early days of the podcast, he was like, "You guys agree too much." It's like, "Wow, we're very similar." And he's like, "You guys need to disagree on stuff. Like, purposefully take have one person take the opposite view just so you can argue about it, and make it more interesting." And I was like, "Well, okay." So we try to be more vocal and like, "Well, I don't know if I believe that," or but so fun stuff.
Yeah.
Sure.
But yeah, so Travis, now that we got those introductions out of the way, wanted to talk with you about your book. Your book that you've written here, The Ideal Man, Reviving Masculinity. First of all, thank you for sending it to us. It was a great, I would call it a little read. It was quick, not too many pages, and had some great insights in there. And Ethan and I even found some pages in there with some custom notes that you had with your signature in there. So thank you for those as well.
You're welcome.
And one of the things I like about this book, just from looking at the surface of it, and for those of you who can't see it, maybe you're not on YouTube, but right on the front of the cover, it says Ideal Man, Reviving Masculinity. He's holding it up there for those that are on YouTube. And he's got basically a list of virtues here. And I love, and then each of the chapters in the book covers a different one of these virtues, in that these virtues coalesce to create the ideal man. Would that be an accurate description, Travis?
they marinate together to create ideal man. Yeah, it's I realize it's a high bar. I would encourage people to not just pick two and make that your identity. there's a lot of work here that you can do. There's a lot of places where you can improve your life, and that's the whole idea, right? So if you feel like you're a pretty good pro at 4 or 5 of these, you're doing a pretty good job. And if you're aware of 4 or 5 more and working on those, well, that's even better. I mean, the whole concept behind it was this: we're looking at a country right now where 43% of children are raised without their father in the home, at least for part of their youth. And it occurred to me just from being in the dating world and just talking to people that maybe a lot of men just never really learned how to be men. So I distilled it. I tried to make it. I'm glad you said that, Jared, that it was a quick read. That was the concept. I wanted it to. It didn't need to be super deep and super, bunch of $5 words in there. But yeah, these are the things that you should be aware of that make you a man. There's two categories of masculinity, right? There's the things that people will label as toxic, and usually those are the things the three of us would just call somebody who's a jerk, right? And then there are the things that the other category are the things that make you different than a woman, and that's what uniquely makes you masculine. Things like being competitive, being bold. Stoicism, I believe, is a strong trait of masculinity, and that isn't repressing your emotions. It's just making sure they don't spill out onto other people. So yeah, that's the concept of it, right? I'm going to give you a manual, a blueprint. If you weren't taught these things, if you didn't have that role model to look up to, well, here's what he would have taught you.
Yeah, I love that. Recently, Travis, we did an episode on, and Ethan and I talk about virtues. We've called them lots of different things. At one point we've called them credos, or just these little nuanced things like, some of the stuff in here: accountability, decisiveness, honorable, honest. These are some of the things in the cover of your book. We've talked about these things as well. And so I was like, hey, this is a great partnership. And one of the things that we recently did was an episode about harmony. And I love some of the research I did on harmony was that in kind of this Taoism, harmony is kind of the culmination of their main principles. And like when you get all these virtues together, harmony is like this fifth virtue that's created, that's like the heavenly principle. And so I feel like that just rings, like having just done that episode and thinking about that, and thinking about all these different virtues you have here on your cover that you cover in your book. It's like if we can get a synergy and a harmony of all these together, it creates almost something entirely different. That it's like a whole new virtue out of all of this, and I think that new virtue is what the ideal man is.
I agree. You're not just the sum of your parts. Just like any professional group, any team, you're better as a group than you are the sum of the parts. So if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. Tie everything together as much as you can. Each step, I put them in a specific order. Like physical fitness is the most accessible, and it's the base for lots of things. But as you go through, things get a little more challenging, and they build on each other. So I very much agree with you. When you get all the way to the end, you feel like you've got a grasp of everything. Yeah, harmony would be a really nice outcome. It sure would be.
That's the last one on here. Just like tie all this together and live all these every day.
Yeah, that's actually the new book will have a lot of that. The new book is outcomes, right? So this is the habits. The new book is going to be sort of a midlife checklist. These are the things that should be in your life if you've been doing things right. Things like love and home and mastery and having mentors. These are the things that will be there if you're doing it right. Yeah, and harmony's a part of that for sure.
That's awesome. One of the things that, as I was reading through these different principles or attributes or virtues, whatever you want to call them, it's funny because I'm kind of taking a personal inventory of myself, and I'm like, you know what? I'm actually doing pretty good at this one. And then I hit some other ones. I'm like, dude, I am not doing too good at this other one, or and kind of read through some of the suggestions. But one of the things that I really kind of appreciated was the setup in the book. You kind of talk about the problem and then the explanation of why that's a problem, and then you get into the solution, which is where we get into these different traits that these masculine traits. And I really appreciated that setup. One of the things that kind of struck me as really interesting is our children for better, for worse, potentially for worse, but they have the potential of having limited exposure to that masculine energy in their life, right? They go to school for 8 hours a day where they are taught by women, which is
78%.
awesome.
78% of teachers are women.
And
Much higher at the elementary level. Yeah.
Yeah, we've had one teacher across our 3 kids so far that have been a man. And these schools are run by women, led by women, and which is to a certain extent there's a reason why they're there, because they have
there's a fit for sure, that
curating and growth and really kind of nurturing of the mind in that atmosphere, which I think is great. But that without exposure to that masculine side of things or that masculine energy, it can be very dangerous. And it's something that really kind of resonated with me, and even gave me kind of a feeling as a father, right? Like, I need to make sure that I'm on top of this, because if I'm not, then who's raising my kids, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And how are they going to get that masculine energy, or how are they going to get that masculine feeling or teachings in their life? Example,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and boys specifically. You guys know this. You have kids. They're going to do everything they see. They'll do most of what you say, but they'll do everything they see, right? So they got to see you doing it right.
Tell them about this. Your boys. The video you just showed me.
So Jared is he does a blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's been
congratulations, good for you.
Thank you.
In that endeavor for a while, and he actually had a tournament that was him and his oldest son, competed in this tournament, and it was like 15 minutes from our house, and so we were like, we're gonna go and we're gonna support Uncle Jared and our cousins, and we went there and it was just awesome. My kids loved it and they enjoyed it. My 2 older boys are 9 and 7, and they wrestle all the time. But it was on Saturday, and so we come home. My wife and I are sitting downstairs, and we're kind of in and out of the house doing stuff, getting stuff done. And it just sounds like the kids are like bowling upstairs or something like that. And we're just like, what is going on? So we have a camera in their room. And so we pulled up the camera in their room, and they are wrestling. I mean, they're like all in, they're rolling Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, right? And they're, and my 7-year-old has my 9-year-old in a headlock, and he's yelling at him, tap, 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 and then they're rolling over and just, they're just doing what boys do.
That's right.
And sometimes as a parent, I'm like, don't do that. You're going to break something, or you're going to whatever else, or you're going to get hurt. But I kind of have to back off of that myself a little bit, because I want them to have those experiences. I mean, Jared and I wrestled all the time. I mean, my mom would still say, the couch downstairs is broken because, you and your brother would wrestle on it and stuff. And it's just like, we did. And it probably is broken.
Yeah,
of that.
I think it's a funny story because that just happened. But I think that part of, and I think Travis would love to hear more of what you have to say about this, because I think this is where, the work you're trying to do now focuses on. But it's all the modeling of masculinity doesn't have to come from the father. And I think that sometimes in our society now, where we have less of a community, everybody feels like they have to do it on their own. Mothers feel like they have to raise the kids on their own. They don't have a lot of support network around them. It's not like it was where you just kind of drop the kids off at grandma's house and just, go do whatever. A lot of people don't live near their parents anymore, or their parents aren't that supportive. And so I think it's so important for you to provide opportunities for your kids to be modeled masculinity by not only yourself, but others. And so, like in that situation, he brought his kids to see my tournament. They saw me roll. They saw me do one of my roles, and then my oldest son. And then, I volunteer and help with the kids' classes at jiu-jitsu or coach soccer. I know Ethan has coached soccer, or basketball or other things. And so it's so important for good men to volunteer their time for the benefit of the community, because there's a lot of kids out there that don't have those role models, and there's a lot of mothers out there that desire that. There's a lot of single moms that put in their kids to jiu-jitsu because, hey, I know that my boy needs a masculine influence, and I don't know where else to get this, and I don't trust him. Maybe send him to Boy Scouts. Maybe they have concerns about that. And so I think that's so important. And Travis, I'd love to hear more of your thoughts on that too, because I know you're really engaged with that kind of work right now.
Yeah, I get that question a lot, man. I was just did a men's group last night. I'm noticing that my tag here on our Zoom call says moral mentor, because that was the group I was working with last night, so it doesn't even say my name. But anyway, it's often that I get that question in various formats. Hey, how can I, as a single mother, access what you're teaching? How can I bring this into my son's life? And you got to do exactly what you're talking about, Jared. It's getting them into not just situations where they're around men, but where they can kind of do manly stuff. I mean, rolling, doing any kind of martial sports, wrestling. I was a Korean Taekwondo guy, so stand-up stuff, the football, all that stuff is a great place for, these kids to be able to. I mean, even if you're not specifically looking at older men, even just interacting with other boys, doing things that the schools try to socialize out of kids, like wrestling. Imagine what would happen if teachers saw your boys wrestling in the hallway, right? They'd put a stop to it immediately. And, that stuff needs to happen. I mean, it's part of your DNA. It has to happen. So I talk about that a lot. I mean, that's usually my answer. Hey, I'm sorry, you're in a bad situation here. You don't have the quintessential, the perfect, the most impactful, male role model, and that's their biological father, but you can access it in other ways. Like I grew up, I was lucky to have a great dad, but I also had really awesome uncles, and I had some great coaches. And I had a couple of neighbor men who I'd work for them, and I would see different aspects of it. And you're always kind of picking and choosing, right? So I'm an amalgamation of all those guys. I'm an awful lot like my dad, but I picked up a lot from my neighbor Dell, this older guy that I used to work with. He had a horse farm, and I got to do things. Because my dad was a teacher. He's a white collar guy, not super rough and tumble. Where Dell, he's a construction guy, like blue collar, right? Same thing. My uncles were worked at the GM plant. They're super blue collar, so you pick up those things. But yeah, and I'm aware of that. So that's the answer I give. If you're not able to provide it yourself, and as Ethan, as you said, it's not really on you to do all of it. Matter of fact, it's on you to give them more of a diverse exposure, right? My parents were really cool about that when I was a kid. Oh, you want to go to this house of these people who are very dirty or whatever, right? They wanted me to experience all kinds of different forms of life. And so you paint your own picture and you decide what you want to be. So that's the answer I give, right? You get your kid around uncles and even grandfathers, and coaches are awesome. They're professional mentors. Okay. They're professional role models. That's what coaches are. Having around those are great. But again, being very conscious of having boy interaction as well, right? Getting them rolling around, playing in the grass, and jumping their bikes over ramps. I don't know if kids do that anymore, but you keep seeing on the internet that they don't. But man, it's such a staple of my upbringing, right? Yeah, right. Yeah, no helmet, no suspension on the bike, no knee pads, and we were just flying over people. But yeah, getting that, and Jordan Peterson talks a lot about it. I'm a big fan of his. About don't mess with a kid while he's skateboarding or something is what he says, and what you're going to learn. And mom wants to protect her kid, and that's a great motivation. There's nothing wrong with that. But dad is going to lean usually on the side of, well, let's let him fail a little bit and see how he handles it, right? Failure is a part of life. You're going to screw up all the time. I screwed up this morning. It happens all the time. So the skateboard thing, right? Kids are going to fall down. They're going to try some things they've never tried. They're going to skin their knee. They're going to bump their arm. But then they're going to get back up and go, that really wasn't all that bad. I healed up and I'm able to keep moving. And what that does is it eliminates fear, okay, or at least decreases it significantly. And if you're going to live a life where you're scared all the time, well, that's no life at all. Ask Teddy Roosevelt. I don't know if you guys are big fans of T.O., but I am.
Yeah.
Yeah. He, he's born with asthma. Rider. Doctors told he told me he could never work out or do anything or he would die. And he's like, well, I'm not going to live like that. So he created his own athletic routine and worked himself through his asthma, and you guys know what he became, right? So yeah, that's the idea. We want to teach kids and boys specifically, how to deal with failure, how to fall down, how to get back up. Pretty simple stuff.
It's it's funny. I told Jared as we were kind of just talking beforehand, and Jared was like, "Well, maybe you shouldn't say that." But it's funny because reading through the book and all the different examples you give examples of like specific people and quote people and everything else, and I'm like, man, this sounds a lot like my social media. I'm flipping through and I see Tim Kennedy and I see Jordan Peterson and I see all these different people, and I'm like, man, this is kind of a accumulation of a lot of the things that I've seen and I agree with, and I guess that the algorithm tells me that I would like. And it really resonated. For sure.
I appreciate you noticing that. I felt like I had to have a good balance in there. I got a ton of the founding fathers. I've got all kinds of people who are long dead, who were wise men, philosophers, great thinkers, excellent with action. But I also wanted to keep things current as well. And yeah, those are the things that, of course, come across my feed. Big fan of Jordan Peterson, big fan of Tim Kennedy. Those guys are doing it right, love their stuff. Tim Kennedy's got a school going. Yeah,
Apogee, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I've got an appointment to talk with, man, and I always blank on his name, but the guy who actually runs the school. I can see it's Matthew Boudreau. Pretty impressive guy, and I'm super excited to hear what he has to say again, because what I'm doing right now, what I'm working on, trying to develop. The fourth book will be, here you go, educator. Here you go, single mother. Here you go, whoever it is. This is how to engage and be great at helping boys grow and be the best they can be. And the Apogee School, I think, is doing a great job of that specifically. Certainly not leaving out girls, but yeah, that's the idea.
Yeah. Yeah. Another thing I kind of liked, one of the things, just the little details in your book is that at the beginning of each virtue, you have an accompanying music. So, for example, the one here, instinctive, you have accompanying music, Bulls on Parade, Rage Against the Machine. I didn't quite pull up the songs, but I could hear them in my mind, as I was like, oh, yeah, I love that song. Or, okay, it kind of sets the tone for the chapter. So I thought that was a good touch.
Thanks. Yeah, that's the idea. I wanted to kind of give you an idea. It's hard to get tone from a book, right? The three of us sitting here talking, and I can see your faces and how your bodies are reacting to the things, right? So you can get that feel for really where you're coming from. In a book, they can't see my face; they're not listening to my voice. There's no up down tempo.
Yeah.
So I wanted to give a tone, right? Something to so you understand if I'm kind of messing around a little bit, or if I'm being very serious. If we're all about fire, like that chapter is about eliminating overthinking. Essentially, there's three ways you can go. You can do the right thing, the wrong thing, or nothing, and that's the order that you should do them. And the right thing's the best thing, the wrong thing is the second best thing to do, and nothing is the worst thing you can do when you have a decision to be made. So Bulls on Parade is that very high tempo, just screaming and running, acting on instinct rather than cognition. And that's what it is to be decisive. Hey, based on what I know, this is what I'm doing. We're going to follow it. And that's that. Glad you guys like that. I went to New York City and met with a guy called Sven Erlandson, wrote a book called There's a Hole in My Love Cup, and several other books. Interesting guy. And he's the only one I ever met who did the same thing.
Oh,
he's
really?
got music in his, he's got music in his chapters too, but he talks about them. He's like, here's why I like the song. It's great because X, Y, Z, and he talks through it. And also a nice thing. But I remember presented that to him, and he's like, "Oh, I already did it." I'm like, "Oh man,
cool.
I thought I had this great idea, and somebody else already did it."
Hey, great minds think alike.
That's what I'm thinking. Hopefully, yeah.
I wanted to kind of pose a topic of discussion, one question, and let's say I'll kind of say this kind of pertains to a couple of the different attributes here, but maybe mostly accountability. I was thinking of accountability as a father. There's a lot of times where I don't do things perfectly. In fact, most of the time, I don't do things perfectly, right? Especially with my oldest child. He's 9, almost 10 years old, and it's interesting because I heard a little comment on a video where it was parents kind of talking to their future oldest child, and they were saying something along the lines of, right, as you are experiencing things for the first time, we are experiencing things for the first time as well. For your oldest child, like my youngest child, I've gone through basically everything that they are going through. I've gone through with 3 other kids, but my oldest one, he's getting, starting to go into puberty and different things like that, and so it's just like he is experiencing these things for the first time, and I'm experiencing them as the first time too as a parent. But the question of the topic is, as a father, and I'd love to know your opinion about this. How much should you apologize, right, for being wrong? Like maybe I'm not calm and I yell, or something happens, right? Or he says, why do I need to do this? And I say because I said so, right? Or whatever it might be. My wife is really good at this, and if she yells or she'll go in and she'll apologize. I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have done that, whatever. And I think sometimes that can kind of be, I guess if it's done too much, I almost feel like that can be seen as a weakness.
Too much good cop, right? It's too much good cop
like
right there.
Over apologetic. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm supposed to be this authority figure in the home.
Mm-hmm.
But if my son is getting exposure to me constantly being wrong, which I am a lot of times, maybe not fully wrong, but maybe I'm not completely right, I guess what's that balance? What's the balance between, admitting and saying, hey, son, I shouldn't have done that. I was wrong. And, I'm the adult. I'm here. I need to show you that this is, how things are done, and this is the direction, and this is whatever. I don't know what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so you're right, there's a fine line, but I think that as long as you stay on the accountability side and you don't move into the excuse side, where you're excusing what they did because of what you did, that's never the case. I think it's an excellent thing as a father and as a man to say, hey, you know what? I got angry there and I regret that. I wish I'd been able to present it to you where I wasn't angry. Doesn't mean that you were not wrong, son. It doesn't mean that you didn't do X, Y, Z incorrectly. And it doesn't mean that I was wrong to present you the information. I just should have presented it in a different way. As long as you keep that clear, all right, here are the things that, that you need to work on. But I want to show you and you probably won't say these words, but I want to show you what it's like as a man to say, hey, I'm owning this. I did that wrong. And next time I won't. Next time I'll work on it. And that's a huge lesson for a young man to learn. Hey, I know I did this wrong. And I'm saying that because I want to admit that I did it wrong. And I want you to know that I know that I did it wrong. As long as you don't transition into the emotional piece of it, which I would assume that's probably the direction where your wife's going to go, where maybe she's emotional about her upsetness, right? I'm so sorry. I wish I hadn't. I don't know. I'm just guessing. But as long as you don't go in that direction, looking for forgiveness specifically, I think then you're okay. As soon as you do that, you're losing that power dynamic. You're the parent. They're the kid. You don't need their permission to be their dad, and you don't really need their appreciation either. If you're lucky, that'll come when they're much older.
Yeah, I like that. As you were talking, one of the things that came in my mind too is you said, be accountable and recognize if there is a mistake or whatever else. But for me personally, it's like, okay, well, I need to do everything I can when that happens to not make that same mistake over and over and over and over and over again, because then I'm just constantly apologizing for something that I always do. And
right.
is that sincere? Is that truly taking accountability if I'm just going to do the same exact thing, next time, and then be, oh, so sorry that I yelled at you like that, or that I did this or whatever else. So I think it has to be accompanied with some change, and then hopefully as I was just
gonna say action,
as you continue to grow, both of you in a relationship, both of us, hopefully, kind of I start to get a little bit better at this whole parenting thing.
Yeah,
Jared, you look like you have thoughts. I want to hear what you have to say.
No, yeah, I think that you kind of at the end there, you kind of said what I was thinking, but. And I'm not saying this is particularly you or your situation, but someone who is, maybe generally saying this is just like, if you're saying, oh, man, I just keep losing my temper with my kids so much that I have to come up with a complex strategy so that I can either apologize or not apologize. It's like, That's like
Don't lose
saying
your
my
temper.
clutch keeps. That's like saying my clutch keeps going out of my car. My car keeps lurching forward and lurching forward. So I'm going to go to the tires and see if I can let out some air and make it a smoother ride. It's kind of like, no, you need to fix that clutch first and get your own stuff in order, because the tires. It's just that's all the way down the line. Maybe it might help.
It's probably
a
your
little
left foot. It's operator error.
Yeah. So it's
That's the problem.
Exactly. So it's like your focus. I feel like, I think it's a good question, because I think sometimes we do make mistakes. But if you're finding yourself saying, "Hey, I'm making mistakes all the time. I'm always short with my kids," or I'm flying off the handle with my kids all the time, and it's like, man, you're asking the wrong question. You need to be asking the question, what can I do to change my behavior, or take a step back in a situation like that and think and respond calmly, so that I'm not having to apologize to my kids all the time. I can, or at least I'm saying things. I mean, I feel like if you have to apologize to your child or to someone, it's because you went above and beyond what you should have gone. If you told your kid 6 times to go, take a shower, and then on the 7th time you're like, dude, go take a shower, and you yell at your kid, I don't feel like you really have to apologize for that. You've given them 7
I don't think that
warnings.
one's on you.
So it's like, that happens all the time. And so it's kind of like, go take a shower. And, you could still say something with force without having to scream. So, but if you're like spanking your kid beyond what it, like, for something that is minute or very small, or you're frustrated at work, and so you come home and you take it out on your kids, those are the types of things you have to apologize for. So if that's happening on a regular basis, something's not aligned, something's not right, or you're not getting out those frustrations that maybe you're carrying in from work, maybe you're carrying in from your relationship with your spouse, maybe you have questions of maybe something's going on in your own mind, and you're taking that on your kids. It's easy to take things out on kids because they just take it, but that's not what the ideal man would do.
No, of course not. And Ethan, I've just known you for a little while here and watching your body language and how you were talking about the situation. You don't seem like a guy who's got a bad temper to me. You probably not yelling at your kids that much. I think you probably feel bad about it more than it probably presents, right? That's my guess. Just keep it to, hey, this is the part I know I did wrong. There's always 2 ways in conflict, right? There's always 2 parties, and own your stuff. And again, I think the best apology, as you said, Jared, change the behavior.
Yeah.
That's the best apology
awesome.
there is.
Ethan's
I'm sure your wives have told you
that. I've got some very awesome kids.
Yeah.
They're great. Yeah.
But
it's not an accident, man. They're awesome because of you and your wife. That's it.
But I think that like one of the nuances I think you're talking about, Ethan, is that, especially with my kids, is that each child is very different, and they require a special set of ways to motivate. Like my oldest, if I say, "Hey, I'll set a timer for 1 minute, and you can clean up this stuff," he'll absolutely lose his mind. But my second oldest and my third, if I say, "I'll give you 1 minute to clean up the stuff," it's like, "Ooh, it's a race, it's on." So there's different ways to motivate your children to respond by saying different things. And so I think that part of, Ethan, what you're talking about is just like, you need to find the way that each one of your children respond the most effectively. And when you can do that, it makes things a little easier, I think.
Jared, are those boys or girls? What are the ages of your kids?
I have all boys.
Okay.
10 down to 4. So 4, 6, basically 8 and 10.
Okay. Just curious.
We spaced them pretty good.
Good for you, man. A couple years between. Good job. That's going to space out your college bills too.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. We've got 4 or 529 plans set up that we're dumping into each month.
Aren't those nice? Yeah, I'm always contributing to those for my nieces and nephews.
Love it. Go ahead.
Yeah. So that was one thing from accountability that I enjoyed. Another thing that, as I was reading through, talked about that came to my mind was hobbies as a father. And it's kind of interesting because we've had a couple different theories around hobbies as a father, right? We've had a couple different people on that talk about masculinity and fatherhood, and it's kind of we get a wide range of let's say, expectations or standards. You know, we've had some people on that are like, if you're a father and if you care about your kids, then you'll just forget yourself, lose yourself. You don't exist. You'll just, you'll die as a person, and everything you do, every waking second of the day is for your kids, is to provide for your kids and your wife.
I'm picking up that you disagree with that, and that's a good thing. Keep going.
And Jared and I were both just kind of like, I don't know, man. It's like if you're not straight with yourself, then I feel like it's hard to get straight with someone else. And so I know you've talked with lots of people from lots of different backgrounds, and I want to hear your thoughts on the importance of fathers or men to have something of their own, whether it's a skill or a hobby or a community or something, jiu-jitsu or something like that. I wonder any thoughts about the importance of that.
I don't know if it could be more important. If you don't, let's look at if you don't. That's a recipe for a midlife crisis right there. When you're just 100% giving it away forever, that's impossible. You can't maintain that. Okay, it's unreasonable for you to expect yourself to. So know that you're headed for a bad end if you do that. And even if you don't, if you make it through, okay, and your kids all graduate and they're off on their own, what do you have in your life at that point? You and your wife are staring at each other. You got nothing to talk about because you didn't go do anything that day that you can bring back and bring to the relationship and be excited about, and she didn't either. Yeah, that's a terrible situation. And again, it goes back to the role modeling thing, man. Your kids want to see you enjoying your life, doing cool things, being successful at things outside of your home. I mean, I'm sure they know that you guys have jobs, but they probably have very little contact with you while you're at work, unless you guys are working from home. And even then, you're probably in an office. They need to see you having fun, because that's going to be their definition of who they're going to be. That's going to be their definition of being able to relax and have a good time. I can't tell you how many times as a kid, my parents we'd have the family over, aunts, uncles, cousins, or the neighbors. We had a lot of fun with the neighbors, right? The parents are over, the kids are playing, the parents are having a beer and talking and telling stories, and you just hear them laughing and joking and having a great time as adults together interacting while we're over there doing the same thing as kids. And even though we didn't give a rip about what they were talking about, we watched them interact and have fun and enjoy it. And I watch my life now, guys. I do the same thing. Like, that's how my life goes. I live in this cool place, like whether that's vacation land for everybody else in Southeast Michigan. So I have house guests constantly. And what do, man? We sit around, we have a beer, we talk, we joke, we tell stories, we laugh, we have a great time. And that's the ultimate definition of happiness, right? They're going to figure out, hey, this is what I want to be when I'm an adult. What does be an adult look like? Well, it's what you guys showed them. And that's a big part of it, right? Yeah. Have to have some things that you have excellent skills with. Maybe you're a big cyclist. You like to go out and ride. Or you just hit the heavy bag in the garage, or heck, you have a golf night, whatever it is. Do it, enjoy it. You gotta get away from the family too. I mean, that's a hugely important thing. You gotta get out and sharpen the saw, right? I learned this the first time I had a job where I didn't leave the house, where I was working from home. Man, that easy chair was a lot more attractive and more beautiful when I wasn't looking at it all day, right? Your home is a much better place when you come home to it, right, than it is when you're there all the time. Yeah, couldn't be more important. You got to have those things in your life for sure. You're role modeling what a well-rounded man looks like.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I agree with what you said. I'll just add one piece onto that I think that, as this past weekend we did this jiu-jitsu tournament. Lots of fathers and sons were there. Lots of dads.
They're good dads.
Go to the gym that I go to, and there was 3 or 4 other dads, actually maybe more like 10, that were there, and their sons were also competing. And they were modeling that courage for their sons. They're saying, you know what, I'm competing. And like one of my buddies, he's a white belt, just a 2-stripe white belt, so fairly new. Maybe he's been in jiu-jitsu maybe 6 months, and his son is similar. Just barely got in. His son got in his match. He got totally wiped out. So he I think he did 3 matches and he lost every single one of them. Son was really bummed. And then his dad went into a match. I think he won once, and then I think he lost twice. And so his son could see his dad also having that same courage to walk into a fight in a tournament situation where it's nerve-wracking, you know, and he can say, hey, if my dad can have the courage to do this, I can have the courage to do this. And so it's not only modeling, you know, like, oh, hey, son, this is how you build a fire, or hey, this is how you do this jiu-jitsu move, or this is how you punch a punching bag. But it's like, this is what courage looks like. This is what service looks like. This is what kindness looks like. And so modeling those attributes or virtues, like some of the things you have in your book here, that's also critically important. And you can do that through your own hobbies. Even if your kids, like, for example, our podcast, you know, my kids, we're modeling creativity. We're modeling brotherhood. We're modeling this, well, I mean, like, kind of uplifting of the community around us. And so even though our boys aren't involved with that, they can still see that. And they're like, oh, yeah, this is a cool thing. And my dad's got something going, and he's doing something with Uncle Ethan, you know, and it's like, yeah, we're doing something together. And so it's kind of cool.
Yeah, you guys are nailing it, man. And that, especially in the jits specifically, they're watching you beat fear. Yeah. And man, what a great lesson to show them. Hey, good job.
Thank you. Well, we got about 10 minutes left, and one of the things I wanted to chat with you about is one of the things we usually do on our episode, and is when we interview guests, and I think this is a good thing for all of us to do, as you'll be posting this on your podcast as well, is we go around and we talk about something that is a part of our personal creed. So we are a Brothers Creed podcast, and a creed is, like Ethan said earlier, a set of principles or beliefs that kind of guides you in your life. So this could be something like a quote or a mantra or a scripture or whatever it may be. In fact, let's see, I think one of the last guys we had on our podcast, his mantra was easy to love, hard to kill. I thought that was a kind of a cool one for him and his family. That was pretty cool.
Oh, man, that's good stuff right there. Good stuff. Yeah, it sounds like something from an 80s karate movie. That's awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you're asking what mine is. Yeah, I have this,
let's have you share yours. Yeah.
I picked this up in Sedona when I was there a few years ago. I still have the price tag on it. The thing was like $25. It's just a regular one of these things where you'd have your name tag in front of your office, but it says "Do epic stuff" on it. Okay,
Yeah.
that's my creed. That's my idea. That, like I told you, I thought I would be raising a family. I'm not. So instead of that, I want to. You know, the worst thing I think you could be is on your deathbed, looking back, going, "What did I do? What did I do with my time? Was I worth a crap? Did I help anybody? Did I improve the world in any way?" And I want to make sure that I can say that I did, not just when I die, but tonight when I lay down. You know, did I bring my best to you guys? Did I present great information that's going to, let's be honest, change the world, right? And your world is much smaller than you think. There's so many activists all over the internet. You've seen them all. They think they're going to change the whole world in China and Israel and Palestine, all this. Your world is your family and the people you work with and your neighborhood. That's about it, man. It doesn't go much further than that. And if you can, impact that, you're changing the world. So that's my idea. Do cool stuff, man. I ran a marathon. I climbed a mountain. I built my own house. I've written books. I run a podcast. I think those are pretty epic. So, yeah, that's my deal right there.
Yeah. I appreciate that, and I love that. Do epic stuff, for sure. Go get out of your comfort zone.
Do it a lot.
And maybe Jared and I can share a little piece of our personal creed as well.
You go
for
listeners.
I was hoping you would.
So I'll go first. It's kind of interesting because we've been doing this for 150, 70 episodes, something like that.
Congratulations. That's a heck of an accomplishment.
So
Thank you.
There's a lot of stuff that I could go back and dig into, but one thing that comes to my mind specifically is, I guess, a word is resilience and grit. that is something that I personally constantly think about, right? Sometimes we run into situations where it sucks. It might be physical pain, it might be mental pain, it might be emotional pain. But being able to withstand those winds and those tempests in your life will definitely be easier if you can learn to get out of your comfort zone. If you can learn to be uncomfortable, whether it's through, exposure therapy or, a couple things that come to mind is, I'm kind of like an introverted extrovert, right? So I have the ability to talk with most anyone about most anything. And
yeah, you seem very comfortable.
And actually, I've kind of built my career around, vendor management and relationship building and things like that. But at the same point, sometimes I just don't, in social situations, I don't like forced interactions. If it doesn't really flow, it's like, I don't know, I feel very uncomfortable. And so, one of the things I hate worst than anything at work is like networking. I freaking hate networking.
Well, forced networking, right? When you're just talking to people that you kind of enjoy, that's networking too. You just don't feel like it is. It's not getting crammed down your throat, right?
Well, I guess that's 100% true. But for me, it's like, if I want to, I try to force myself in those social situations to, go outside the box, go outside of my comfort zone. And the more that I do it, the more I become resilient to those situations, to where when I'm put in those situations in the future, I can deal with it. It's not some kind of stressful thing that's going to completely just crumble me and collapse me. The same thing. I've for the past couple years, I take cold showers, and it freaking sucks, and I hate it. But it's something for me that, like, I'm standing in the shower. And typically, I take just a hot shower, and then I'll end the last 3 minutes with a cold shower, as cold as it'll go. And I'll turn it cold, and I'll stand there and wait for it to get cold, let it run for a second before I get into it. And it's like this buildup. I have to talk myself into it. It's like if you've ever been cliff jumping and you're at the edge of this cliff, and you're like, oh man, that's really far down. You're in this limbo of, I want to do it, but I don't want to do it. I'm scared it's gonna maybe hurt or whatever else. And then being able to overcome that inner voice that, as soon as I step in the water, my inner voice just starts screaming, and I stay in the water until it stops.
You master that inner voice, right?
Yeah, and then when it stops, and I'm just like, this ain't that bad. This actually feels kind of nice. And so I would say for anyone out there, part of my personal creed is trying to build resilience in my own life, so that when unexpected things come into my life that are difficult or are hard, I can't crumble. There's too many. There's too much. There's too many people that rely on me to just crumble.
Get yourself a mantra. I don't know if you have one or not, Ethan, but in those situations, I got a buddy who does the cold shower thing. His name's Chris Otto, great dude, and he just 3, 2, 1, go. That's his thing. When he's facing something that's tough, he just in his head goes 3, 2, 1, go, or say it out loud. And you'll get in the habit of, whenever you are facing something difficult outside of that cold shower, you can just shake your head and go 3, 2, 1, go, and just do it. Have a mantra. That's my best advice for you on that one.
Love it.
Good for you that you're making yourself uncomfortable. That's a good thing.
Now, one of the cool things that Ethan and his wife do every year is that they kind of choose one word for the year. Really simplistic, resilience or discipline or whatever it is. And then that year they focus on that word. So in a way, it's a kind of a cool New Year's resolution that they do. They each choose a different word, and they try to help each other stick to that word. It's very simplistic, but it can mean a lot. And so I think that's a really cool thing that Ethan has.
It's a combined goal, dude. That's really awesome. What a great relationship trait for you.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Of course. I would say something that a part of my personal creed. And actually, I have in my office here, which is where we record most of our podcasts, and where I actually do most of my work. I work from home most of the time. I have kind of 3 posters above my desk here. And it kind of reminds me of three different kind of attributes that I strive to live by. One is the quote from Theodore Roosevelt, "Man in the Arena." I'm sure you've
Greatly.
heard
Excellent
that one.
stuff.
So that just reminds me to take the risk. I'm a data analyst by trade, and so I am very numbers driven, and I need to be reminded to take the risk in life and go do something, even though I might fail. Take the risk and get out there and do something. And so that's a great reminder to me that I don't want to be on my deathbed with a bunch of "I wish I would have" regrets. The next one in the middle is a picture of a boat on a stormy sea, and with the quote, "A smooth seas never made a skilled sailor."
That's the truth, buddy.
That one
There's that
reminds-
difficulty that Ethan was talking about.
Exactly. A ship wasn't made to just sit in the harbor. And so it kind of reminds me to go if I'm feeling like I'm just really comfortable. I mean, there are days when I'm just like, oh, I'm working from home. Wake up. I just do my workout. It's just very comfortable. And so I'm like, if I'm getting too comfortable, I'm like, I need to try something different. I need to keep mixing it up and try pushing myself. And then when times get difficult, I remind myself, hey, I'm not going to be very skilled if I never have to overcome hard situations. So that's kind of like my mantra is, smooth seas never made a skilled sailor. And then the third picture I have is the poem by Dylan Thomas. It says it's "Do not go gentle into that good night."
Right. Yeah.
And many folks know this one from Interstellar. It just talks about
Been in lots of stuff. It was in the Rundown too. That's
Yeah.
a movie from The Rock.
just kind of fighting against the dying of the light. He said, the part that says rage against the dying of the light. So it's kind of for me, it's almost like a memento mori, if you will, like a reminder of death. That death is inevitable, and whatever my actions are here on earth, make them worth it, and do things that bring me joy in this life. If I'm doing something that I don't like to do, or that I'm not enjoying, or I don't see the value in, don't do that thing. That doesn't mean don't do hard things, because I do hard things all the time that have that have value.
Yeah, that's discipline.
Yeah, and so that's kind of a third reminder that of the mortality that is before me, and this is my opportunity as I live and breathe to pass on a legacy to my kids, pass on a legacy through the podcast and through my actions to my community and family, of modeling fatherhood, modeling manhood, and in kindness. So
you guys are doing it right, man. You're living with intention. You're aware of what you are doing and how it's being received. And so many people just float through their lives. I'd say most do. And the fact that you guys are choosing to do it the way you are, I commend that. Well done. We need more good fathers, more good men. You guys are going to make sure that the boys that you raise are going to be good ones. So good for you.
Thank you so much. Well, Travis, I wanted to give a shout out to our listeners who may not be familiar with where to find you. Could you maybe tell us, our listeners, where they could find you? Maybe tell us where they can find your podcast, and then your book here is The Ideal Man, Reviving Masculinity. Where can they find this? On your website? I know you have a website.
Yep. The website is travisneville.com. If you Google Reviving Masculinity, it's going to be the first thing that comes up. And from there, you get to the website. You can order t-shirts, stickers, books, whatever you want to. The podcast, any place that there are podcasts. I'm sure you guys are just as well, branched out. I'm on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and iHeartRadio and Spreaker and any place you get podcasts, I'm out there. The audio version, anyway. I've been on YouTube for a long time, but recently, evidently, I got so many strikes. Not sure how. Talking about masculinity, they'll give you a strike that I can't upload to YouTube anymore. So I've moved over to Rumble, which is a place it functions just like YouTube. I've got all my content up there. Yeah. So if you want to watch the podcasts, you have to go to Rumble. But listening to them, you can go anywhere. But TravisNeville.com too. From there, you can get to all those other things I just mentioned. So that's kind of the hub. Yeah. But yeah, that's where you go. And geez, the book's at Walmart. It's at Barnes and Noble. It's everywhere, which is cool.
Oh,
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, I would say for our listeners and for your listeners too that maybe haven't read the book, it's an awesome read.
Thank you.
It's definitely puts you in the right mindset for sure. And Travis, I really appreciate just your commentary and as we talk through some of these things and some of these challenges as fathers and men, your opinion and thoughts have really given me personally kind of things to think about. How can I come at things differently? How can I think a different way and really try to not only in my own life become more masculine but how can I apply that to, my kids' lives? I have 3 boys, but as well, each one of these things too, it can be applied to my daughter as well. I think it's just as important for her to be able to maybe understand these traits and hopefully know that these are the traits of the ideal man, maybe someone that she wants to be with. Hopefully I can be that person, that example for her to say, I want to join myself with someone that's like my dad.
I get that question all the time from women. Hey, you write about masculinity all the time, but what's this going to do for girls? What's this going to do for women? And I always answer
Set
the
the bar.
same way. Yeah. What kind of young man do you want your daughter to date? What kind of man do you want in a partner? Who do you want, let's say, leading the country or running the business that you work for if it happens to be a man? I mean, that's how it helps you. Okay. But the biggest one is, who do you want your daughter dating? Somebody who wasn't instructed on what it is to be a good man, or someone who was. It's just that simple.
Yeah. Excellent. And then for those of your podcast that might want to find us, we are on Instagram. We're actually on TikTok as well. You can find our podcast, A Brothers Creed, on YouTube as well as pretty much every platform that you can imagine. Most of our listeners come from Spotify and
Apple Podcast.
Yeah, I'm Apple Podcast #1. Spotify's like a distant second.
Yeah. But, we'll put some links to your show notes, to your website and your podcast in our show notes, and we'll give you ours
appreciate it.
To do the same. So one of the things, if it's okay with you, Travis, we'd like to end the episode with a call to action that we usually do at the end of our episodes. We challenge after talking about something that's been uplifting, we challenge our listeners to apply what they've learned into this podcast today, and we ask them to build their creed with us. So with that, thanks for meeting with us, and let's build our creed together.
Let's do it.
Thank you, Travis.